You talk about strategic water source areas, Jane. Our local municipalities don't even know what strategic water source areas are. They don't even know that we've got beautiful written mechanisms for protection of strategic water source areas. But have we done enough awareness internally as government in the three spheres, or we have not done that? So I'm gonna end here because I'm getting emotional.
But the point that you're emphasizing is around raising awareness as a critical one, but also seeing how the policy processes cascade down effectively. So thinking about capacity building linked to that and how we work in that space, and also some of the unique problems that you're encountering in the implementation space. So I do want you guys to write that down quite explicitly on the card so we capture it adequately. I do want to note, I know Nkapi, your hand was up as well, like it's been really encouraging, and I know it's been difficult for the colleagues in the Department of Water and Sanitation over the last couple of years, but it's been really encouraging to see how things have shifted. And I know sometimes we get frustrated, and one of the first comments that I had with one of the DWS colleagues and regional officers was like, we really are struggling with stakeholder engagement because there are lots of perceptions out there as well. But I think it's about how we create the opportunities to connect, because we've had a really positive experience with the department. But it does mean like we have to create those platforms to connect, and I'm linking to Nomsa's point around earlier. How do we create that opportunities to connect, to better communicate, and to this point, with key partners, but also the different stakeholders at the different levels. Please make sure you capture all the detail, Dee.
Thanks, Jenny. We need to keep capturing you as well.
There was someone here. Okay, mine's just a quick one, and I work in the biodiversity sector, helping with supporting policy, and sometimes when we get into the issue of water, we tend to step quite far into the water sector and its policies. And it's just a reminder to remember the biodiversity and our own policies that we need to keep thinking about aquatic ecosystems, aquatic species, and yeah, don't step too far into the water sector that we're forgetting our own mandate as well. So yeah, things like protected area expansion strategy and that sort of thing, and making sure that water and aquatic species are included there.
Thank you very much. There's another comment, and then we need to probably start closing, go to the next theme after that.
I am Barbara Weston from the Department of Water and Sanitation. I think if I look at those 3 points there, firstly, investment in nature-based solutions, we are just making use of one project in the region of about 21 million rand that we're spending over 3 years now to determine the present ecological state. In other words, how does the ecological health of a river reach look like at this point of time, and what is the importance and sensitivity, especially in rivers and wetlands that's connected to rivers and some important estuaries. That's just one project. Then the legislation in terms of the Water Act, Chapter 3, is everything about natural accounting. It's catering for determining the reserve. What is the reserve? It's the water quantity and quality that is required by the environment to produce your ecological infrastructure, to make sure that your wetlands are performing its attenuation function, it's performing its pollution purification process, all those type of things. So that is. And Chapter 3 of the National Water Act describes that there's only one right to water, only one. All the other ones are subject to water use licensing or general authorizations, and that is water for the environment, water for ecological health, the quantity and the quality, and then water for basic human needs, where people are still directly dependent on a water source and does not have piped water to their place where they live. Right? So that is the only right to water, which indicates the importance of what has been given to the environment through the national legislation. The National Water Source Strategy was mentioned, that must build into the custom management strategies. where interaction with local government and municipalities must take place, where they need to take those things and put the strategic water source areas into their IDPs and their water service development plans. And I'm not taking the excuse that people you can't play ignorant and say you didn't know of these things when they've been out. There's been public participation in terms of the strategic water resource areas. We are now busy with the groundwater resource areas. And we found just 2 weeks ago that the agriculture industry came to us and blamed us for a whole lot of things that we did not do, where we have explicit evidence where we included them in the stakeholder participation. They decided not to participate. And then at the end of the day, when the department gives fair time for people to comment on reports, since there are 60 days, they come on day 60 and they come with 15 pages, 10 pages, 20 pages reports on comments that they have now, and they're waiting until the last minute. So I think cooperative governance is both ways. It's people's willingness to participate in it and the government's willingness to make as much information available to the public so that they can participate. There's some other things also.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick one. I'm Dando from Sandy. Speaking about investing in nature-based solutions and EI, I was thinking we have certain tools in existence. For example, there are guidelines for ecosystem-based adaptation in the country that were developed by DFFE. Although the focus is more on climate change, I think it's another tool to potentially look at in contributing to sustainable water management. Secondly, I wanted to say maybe we should also consider, I think linking to the point around advocacy and awareness, collecting and documenting success stories and case studies that will link to sustainable water management. This would be the spirit of promoting advocacy for sustainable water management. Thanks.
That's a great
Thanks so
point.
much for that, Ntando. And you did put a lot of detail on there. Thank you. So there's quite a lively discussion. I think a real call for us to work in a cooperative way. I think there's a lot happening in the different spheres, but there's an opportunity for us to find each other in particular areas where there might be some challenges. Last one, we've got 2 more.
I just wanted to add on the point that Emily made earlier on in terms of the mandates. What I often, or what I've learned in the past from experience, that disconnect between the biodiversity mandate and the water mandate is our biggest problem. I don't understand, because for our rich biodiversity to thrive, we need the water resources. So I always don't understand how we have biodiversity and water separated as different mandates, because the two need each other to thrive.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on to the next theme. We actually don't have that much time left, so but this one is around enhancing resilience. And so thinking how we can do that via risk assessment and monitoring, such as early warning systems, data collection, monitoring, and also via adaptive management, such as through flexible policies, stakeholder engagement, and involvement of different communities in these decisions, which is one of the comments that you made. So yeah, many of these comments are obviously relevant to the different themes, but if you have something new relating to this, it's also very useful.
It's just adding 2 more points. One links to issues around waste and management, particularly in the urban setting, and the other around capacity building, which links to some of the points that didn't see they raised earlier. Is anything else new coming up?
I think what's pretty we've circulated a page now just with your details, put it on there because it's such a rare moment to get all of you experts here in one place. And what we can do is, sorry, I hope you heard me, just in terms of maybe putting your names down on the paper that we're circulating, because what we can then do is write up the comments from the session and circulate it to you, and if you feel like we didn't quite grasp how you meant it, or you have another point that you want to add, you can do that in the document that we circulate, and we can therefore build on this rich set of insights.
I just want to mention a nice corporate governance sort of initiative that is happening still, is with land matters. And I don't see them featuring much here, but the department had some good, especially in the Breede, Goudroods and Stellenbosch area, specifically with the Eerste River. We had some very good collaboration with the stakeholders, where it's sort of a trade-off situation where you get owners of farms, you participate with them, land matters come in, and you work with them. They pay a levy or a certain amount into a certain organisation, like the irrigation board or whatever the case might be, and then they get the land care to come and take the aliens off their property, which puts more water into the system, which is a benefit to us from the departmental point of view in terms of looking at our assets, our ecological infrastructure and that kind of stuff. And for them it's also a win-win situation because we assist them with the rehabilitation of the riparian base with indigenous stuff. So that when the floods come, they don't have that flood damage, and they open their farm sort of up to taking the exotic stuff out, and then preventing further proliferation of this stuff downstream. So that's a nice partnership that was created in a few places. And then also in terms of early warning systems and data collection, that is a big problem even with the department, that we are struggling to get enough people and feet in the regions and on the floor to collect data. And then the other thing is also not just in terms of the data collection, but then the actual manipulation and interpretation and use of the data, and putting that into the adaptive management cycle where you learn, you do, you try, you learn, you do, you try. So it's happening. And somebody said just now, people must start talking about this good stuff that they've done and give recognition to people that are participating in the process, and allowing us to, for instance, put more water into the system. People must get recognized for that openly. And we will find that more and more people will come and participate. We had good programs with working for water, working for wetlands. They've died out for a little bit. We've empowered people to look after their resources. People must take responsibility for the water resources in the area. It's not just the Department of Water and Sanitation responsibility. And support the municipalities. Thank you.
I think those are fantastic points, and I'm specifically enthused by communities and municipalities where you see where there is so much. The show will go on. But there's so much more participation these days, and I'm very interested in the behavioral economics perspective, and if we can find incentives for people to participate, and also, like you said earlier, use these case studies, these stories of what's happening on the ground, and make more of that and make it available so that other communities can learn from it and see, incorporate it. I think that's fantastic.
So one of the things is that there's a forum that's been established for Fly, which is a Ramsar site, and we obviously obligated, according to the convention, we are obligated to look after our Ramsar sites. Fly has formed a forum, Friends of Fly, and they're doing fantastic work, and they're keeping the department on their toes. What about this? What about this? When are you doing this? There's an illegal road to this. What are you going to do about that? talk to the municipality, and that's what you want. You want them to take ownership of their resource and then find partnership through the government departments on different levels to participate with them and look after the system with them, and not as just the only mandatory responsibility for that system.
Thank you for the response.
Thanks. I'm just checking at the first one about the early one, in which, in a way, is probably to prevent the water loss and other things. So I'm just thinking also, because there was, somebody was talking about how they talk with DWS and DWS sometimes refer to the municipalities. But in fairness, sometimes we also report to the water leaks and other things. And I know an area in Randburg where there was water leak for a month, and it was reported many times, and it was not fixed. I'm not sure whether we can add it, or maybe it can be part of communication or policy and the cases that it can also be added to. Yes.
Yeah, awareness raising also around regulatory frameworks. I think that's a good point. Did you write something? Please continue writing. It's so useful for us to have all this information. And if you run out of little cards, I will remind you that you've got this nice notepad when you came to the session, so you can always tear one from there.
I can't run around anymore because Stacy said I could let me back into that building after I break this more things.
Thank you. So I'll be responding to the risk assessment and monitoring. And what we see is that the department, they do have some sort of monitoring that they do, and water boards also have a monitoring that they do. Local municipalities also, they do have a monitoring, and we also know that in a lot of catchments, we've got the environment where they use citizen science to do the monitoring. But when we see that there's no collaboration between these entities, we feel like the environment should be actually guiding the catchment management agencies on the early warnings with regards to the areas that they're not actually monitoring. So we see that there's a lot of working in isolation that could be a risk with regards to data collection.
Hi, Nobilo from Prime Africa as well. I think just to add on to what Dineo has already said, not only is there lack of collaboration between all of the entities that are collecting the data, but there's also like spots where there's much monitoring and spots that are neglected, so to speak. So people will only prioritize areas where they probably are emitting or what's the word? Yes, discharging, yes, and then they'll look upstream of that, downstream of that, and then there's other places that are neglected and we don't have enough data for the entire catchment. So I think it would be helpful if we were able to spread out on the sites that we choose to monitor.
I think also interesting to think about how one finance, sort of more extensive monitoring and data gathering efforts. Coming back to you.
I knew Dini, you were going to hit the card that I'm pretending because what you are copying. Anyway, what she said about also sharing the positive activities that are happening in our work, I want to echo that, especially in terms of stakeholder engagement and involvement in decision making. We have in catchments what we call learning platforms. We've got the Umgeni Ecological Infrastructure Partnership. In KZN, we've got Umzimvubu Catchment Partnership in the Eastern Cape. Most recently, we have Breda Sondering Catchment Collaborative and the Northern Drakensberg Collaborative. I'm just talking about those that Sandy are part of. And working through those learning platforms has really allowed for this adaptive management, this participatory decision making, people taking ownership of their resources and making sure that they are responsible, they are accountable for their actions. The data collection that Dina was talking about in terms of using the local champions. We've got EnviroChamps, we've got NGOs that are embedded at catchment level, at local communities level. We don't have to think only thinking flexible policies, and we're thinking at the national level. We need to figure out how do we do that bottom up, closing that feedback loop to say we've got the data that is collected by the youth that are in the catchments or in that local community. How do we verify the results of the data that they've been collecting, and how to capacitate them in terms of making sure that the data we are getting is data that is usable for decision makers and policy makers.
Thanks very much, and I think that point has also been super relevant for this in nature-related risk and opportunities work, which can be quite complex, and it's very data-driven, and how do we get it in an accessible form to stakeholders and communities. Quickly, here's one.
Yeah, thanks. I think Dansile covered me partly on her point around champions, because I was going to say, one of the things is that you see in communities, maybe you're passing a stream or some certain kind of water body, and it's been neglected or polluted. Maybe it could be coming from people not understanding how it benefits them as a member of the community. So I was going to suggest that maybe we could identify prominent figures within certain communities that we could try and bring in as water ambassadors or champions. Because I think if they see this prominent figure doing the good deeds, the likelihood is that all people who look up to that individual will then model the behavior and take some sense of pride and ownership on those water resources. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to add something earlier when colleagues were talking about the citizen science work and how critical that is. Something exciting and new that's happening that WRC is exploring with the catchment management agencies and with the Department of Water and Sanitation is a community of practice, so where the 6 gazetted water or catchment management agencies across the country convene to start to look at how are they moving forward now, so starting to explore that conversation. And one of the key considerations there is around monitoring data, and it links to what Barbara mentioned earlier also, around the work that's already happening, but in a more coordinated way, but having a collective voice for those catchment management agencies. So I think there is some really exciting stuff that's afoot. Thanks.
I think my input, most of the people have spoken about it, which is in terms of assessment, usually people in the townships. I'm going to speak about townships because I grew up there, and I believe that those are communities that are neglected. I don't know if there's a policy that says all factories are allowed to dump in townships, but that's what they do. We've grown up with that, and it's something that's happening at the moment. And in terms of assessment, people in townships no longer actually say anything that's happening in their township because it happens all the time. It's exactly what's happening. So if we can start capacitating and teaching the ordinary citizen what their rights are and how they can actually mitigate whatever that they see that is happening in their space, then we can go a long way into assessing and monitoring the river systems, because right now everything is being done in townships and visibly this very moment. I don't know if there's a policy that was written like that says dump everything in townships. I don't know. If there is, I would like to know it so that we can challenge it somehow. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Nomsa. And so also thinking about how we engage, particularly the municipal space around that. Quite a key one, I think, you touched on it earlier as well, around how we work with municipalities in this space as well. So to check if there's anything else around this
Can I just say, if you were vigorously making some notes on a card and you didn't get a chance to speak in the first or second session, just give the card to us. Just write theme 1, theme 2, or theme 3 on it, and we can add it. Please don't walk out of the venue with your valuable information. And also, if you haven't said anything and you feel like none of the comments here relate anything to what you've been thinking about, that's exactly why we want you to write down and tell us what you're thinking. So please, don't think that it's not relevant. We want very diverse perspectives here. And so if you don't want to say it, just write it down and we'll decide afterwards where it fits in the bigger scheme of things. The last point, we have about less than 10 minutes left, is policy and regulatory frameworks. I know some of the comments that some of you have made. How many? 8 minutes left. So some of the comments that you've made is related to this, but we're thinking about things like prioritizing action within areas with significant overlap between sensitive ecosystems and economic activities, thinking about strengthening regulations, and also integrated water resource management, cross-sectoral coordination, policy alignment. So anything that comes to mind with regards to any of those themes and topics, please give us your thoughts.
I just wanted to say all of those and more are in our alternative strategy. We've done a lot of workshops around it, and for those who were not able to be part of the consultation, I'll be giving a talk virtually educated and next to 2014. So you're welcome. I can share with you the link. You're welcome to learn more about the strategy. I'll be presenting to researchers. It will be a bit more technical, but you'll get the idea.
I apologize for talking too much, but something really touched my heart. You see, there is an issue with the way that government does things with communities. We do online workshops, our people don't have money for data. They do not have money to listen to you online. Go to the people on the ground. Do workshops for the people on the ground. Speak to them, community to community. Go and speak to them directly and hear what they've got to say with their spaces. They are not blind. They can see what is happening around them. So policies that are made at the top and then filtered down to the bottom is not a working system. Speak to the people that live in those areas, and those people are the ones that should tell you what should be in your policy, because it is their space, it's what they use. And they are not stupid, they understand. They just do not have the means, the financial means to be able to do what you want them to do. Your policies end up not working because you are speaking to deaf ears. You are speaking to people that already know what you're going to be talking about. But the people that need to know this information cannot access you. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Any other comments? There's another one there.
I'll do that. I'll say this is not my field at all, but maybe one area that hasn't been touched on here is estuaries and estuarine dependence on freshwater systems, and also just how that fits into, I guess, the frameworks of freshwater management and regulations.
Thanks a lot. Yes, and certainly I haven't seen it in our overall report mentioned as well, so I think it's something that we will bring into that discussion.
Thanks. Just to reiterate something that Celia mentioned earlier, is maybe a focus on implementing strategies, policies that we already have, existing policies, compliance and enforcement of those, rather than creating
think one of the ideas that Alex Marsh, and she was with Sandy, but I think many others of Sandy has discussed this, has had, is that really this should be the start of a community of practice in the space. And I think your comment really feeds into that. One more comment here?
Yes, so my contribution will be about the strengthening of regulation. And I think it's quite prevalent in the Highveld area where there's a lot of mines being abandoned. So even though there is a mine closure strategy in place that looks at the fact that when you have a mine, you have to look after it into perpetuity, but it's not the case currently. So there needs to be some sort of collaboration between the Department of Water and Sanitation and the DMRE to understand how can we make sure that the mines that we have are not impacting the water resource that is currently happening at the moment.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Jane, do you want to say something?
I think one of the things that's, and we don't have enough time, ideally I would have wanted us to have way more of a discussion because it's such a rich area to work into, and just thinking about what's come out of the study as well, the emphasis around the repayments for water, but also the big thing for us is around what is the real situation on the ground and what does that then mean for what the study is telling us. So also figuring out how do we build in efficiencies in what we're currently doing. There are existing issues and challenges that we're not meeting, and what mechanisms are there that we're able to deal with that. So that's one of the thoughts that was sitting with me when I was listening to colleagues giving feedback. There's amazing innovative work that's happening around monitoring citizen science, etc. It's how we coordinate that effort that's the challenge right now. So figuring out what is the most appropriate mechanism for that is one. Also thinking about the quality of data, who does that, the analysis, etc. What are the systems that it feeds up into? And the other big thing is like, and we spoke about it for the last 2 days, we've got these big, so like if you think about the Global Biodiversity Framework, SDG 6, we've got these big reports that we have to do. The RAMSA report is due one of these days. And so how do we create systems that feed up so that when you are reporting, it's a single process. So aligning reporting systems in a way that makes it easier for us to report all the way from where the data collection is happening through those different structures so that it feeds into national and global reporting. So there is some thinking that's happening around that, but it is also about how we organize ourselves on the ground to make that happen. The innovation in the policy space, we're starting to see the right movements. Like I said, the water sector policy space has been alive in the last couple of years, and it's been really encouraging to see that because there was quite a lot of concern there for quite a long time. It's really exciting to see the shifts that are happening. The implementation of the policies has always been a concern, and to the point that I think Emily just raised around like what is the ask of us to get us to implementation is really important. But also thinking about what do we do in interim. So if the policy kicks in 2 years of the law, the strategy becomes in effect next year or the year after, what are we doing in the meantime that lays the ground for implementation? What capacity needs to be built? What engagement with key stakeholders on the ground need to happen for us to facilitate that? So the work that you're doing, the work that Danae and them are doing, but really scaling that across the country. So that was just some of the reflections listening to what colleagues were raising just now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jane. Even though you're part of the team, this is such a nice opportunity to be here with you and get your wisdom on this project, which we will also incorporate into the findings. If you have any more cards with anything on it, please give it to us and we can come get it from you. We do want it still. We need to bring the session to a close because it's now 1:15, and so we need to get to have some lunch. we're actually not going to do a feedback on these breakaway sessions in the plenary now. Amy just let us know. It's just because we're a little bit running over time and we want to fit everything in. But thanks so much for being here. We got much more rich and diverse information than what I was expecting. And it's also good that we've had the recordings. If, as I said, we've got your emails. I hope you've put it down. If you don't, please do so, because that will help us to circulate this information back to you, and you can add on to that if there's something else that comes to mind, or if you feel like your entire point wasn't quite grasped.